I spent 9 years living and working around the world as a digital nomad. And I want to say this right up front. I loved that life. I really did. So this is not a video about regret. It's not me trying to tell you that I made some huge mistake. And it's definitely not me saying I'm done with that life, because I'm not even close. But I do want to tell the truth about something people don't talk about enough. That life gave me a lot, but it cost me too. And some of those costs took me a long time to really understand. But first, if you're new here, let me introduce myself. I'm Ronda Taylor. At 52, I sold everything I owned after my marriage ended. I bought a one-way ticket and spent 9 years living and working across more than 30 countries as a full-time digital nomad. But over the past year, my income changed in ways I didn't expect, and I've been rebuilding ever since, while finding my way back to solo travel and the next version of this life. This channel is where I document midlife reinvention in real time, the financial realities, the hard decisions, and what starting over actually looks like when you're in your 50s and 60s. If you're a woman in midlife navigating what comes next, you're in the right place. So let me start with what that life gave me, because it gave me freedom. It gave me confidence. It gave me perspective. It gave me adventure. It gave me experiences I never would have had if I'd stayed inside the version of life I had already outgrown. And maybe most importantly, it gave me proof that I could trust myself, that I could start over, that I could build a life that felt more honest and more aligned with who I really was. That part is absolutely real, and I'll always be grateful for it. But I'm older now, and I see the trade-offs more clearly. And I think that matters, because when people talk about this kind of life, they usually talk about what it looks like from the outside. The freedom, the travel, the flexibility, the boldness of it. What they don't talk about as much is what a life like that can quietly ask of you over time. One of the things it cost me was stability, and not in some dramatic, everything fell apart kind of way. It was more in that slow, subtle way where you don't fully notice what isn't being built because you're so busy making the life work. I built freedom. I really did. But what I didn't build well enough underneath that freedom was long-term stability, a stronger financial foundation, more consistency, more backup, more support for the seasons when life gets harder. And that's a hard thing to admit, because from the outside, my life probably looked incredibly brave. And in a lot of ways, it was. But bravery and structure are not the same thing. I've always worked. I've always supported myself. When your life depends on you continually making the next thing happen, that comes with pressure. The next project, the next client, the next stretch of income, the next decision. That pressure becomes your normal. And when something becomes your normal, you stop questioning how much it's taking out of you. You just keep going, because you become the woman who always figures it out, who always lands on her feet. And for a long time, I was proud of that. I'm still proud of that. But I can also tell the truth now and say that constantly having to create the next layer of safety for yourself is exhausting. It does something to your nervous system. It keeps part of you on alert all the time. And that's not because I was failing. It's because I was carrying a lot more of the structure by myself than I fully admitted at the time. Eventually, life starts asking different questions. Questions about what happens when your health changes, what happens when your work changes, what happens when your energy changes, what happens when the life you built still fits your spirit, but maybe not your structure anymore. And that's when some of the cost became a lot clearer to me. There's also an emotional cost to always being the one who adapts. And I don't think I fully understood that until later. When you live this way for a long time, you become incredibly resourceful. You get brave. You get flexible. You get very, very good at figuring things out. But always adapting has a cost. Always being the one solving the problem has a cost. Always carrying the responsibility has a cost. And always being the one who can make it work somehow also has a cost. I think that's one of the strange things about this kind of life. You can feel alive in it. You can feel awake. You can feel free and still be getting worn down by it at the same time. Both things can be true. I had years where I felt incredibly expanded by the life I was living. And I had moments inside those same years where I was tired in a way that was harder to name. Not because I didn't love the life, but because I was the one holding it all together. And that's a very different thing. And I don't think I fully understood how tired I had become until I stopped long enough to notice it. Another thing it cost me was relational. And honestly, this is one of the harder parts to talk about because it's not neat and it doesn't make for some big shocking moment, but it is real. This life cost me some closeness. It cost me continuity in certain relationships. It cost me some friendships. Not all of them, but some. And I don't mean that in some dramatic, everybody left my life kind of way. I mean in the quieter way. The way that happens when you're not there for the ordinary parts of life anymore. The last minute coffee, the casual dinner, the quick check-in when somebody's had a hard day, the birthdays, the routines, the small things that don't seem important until you realize those are actually the things relationships are built on. When you live far away long enough, some relationships keep growing. Some absolutely do. But some don't. And that's painful in a way I don't think I fully let myself name at the time. It also cost me a certain kind of day-to-day belonging. The ease of being known in ordinary life. The ease of being in one place long enough for a relationship to deepen naturally. There's something really meaningful about being known in the day-to-day. Not in the big story of your life. Not as the woman who sold everything. Not as the friend sending updates from another country. I mean, being known in the ordinary rhythm of life. And I think I underestimated how much that matters. Because freedom is wonderful, but being deeply known, that matters too. And sometimes those two things sit in tension with each other more than people want to admit. And I think another cost was the pressure to keep being the woman who made the bold choice, the woman who sold everything, the woman who left, the woman who made freedom work. There can be a strange pressure in that, pressure to keep the story going, pressure to not admit when parts of it have gotten harder, pressure to keep being identified with the brave choice, even when your relationship to that choice is changing. And I think that part is especially hard when your identity gets wrapped up in being the woman who did the bold thing, because then it can feel like admitting the harder parts means you're betraying the story or betraying yourself. And that's not true. It did work. It changed me. It has completely changed my life. It gave me a life I loved. But I think I stayed quiet about some of the costs for too long because I didn't want the honesty to sound like regret. And they are not the same thing. So when I say this life cost me something, I'm not saying it wasn't worth it. It was. It absolutely was. I'm saying I understand it more honestly now. And what I want is not less freedom. It's freedom with more backbone under it. I'm not done with this life. I still want a life where I can live and work from anywhere. That hasn't changed. What has changed is how I want to build it. More structure, more support, more stability, more honesty about what this kind of life actually requires. I don't want fragile freedom. I want freedom that can hold me, freedom that works financially, freedom that works emotionally, freedom that works practically. That's what I'm rebuilding now. Not a smaller life, a stronger life, a life with more backbone under it. Because I've already lived enough to know that freedom by itself is not the whole story. The question is whether the life underneath it can actually hold you over time. So no, I don't regret those 9 years. They changed me. They expanded me. They gave me a life I loved. I'm just rebuilding my way back to it with a lot more clarity now and a lot more respect for what it really takes. I'd love to know in the comments, when you think about freedom, what part appeals to you most? And what part feels the hardest or the most costly? If you want honest conversations about rebuilding, freedom, work, working remotely, reinvention, and creating a life that actually fits you, please subscribe. That's what I'm sharing here. So until next time, rebuild boldly and live fully.